Hello, everyone.
Go on.
Hello.
Hey, quiet. Okay, let's jump in.
I'm in class right now, so once I'm done, I'm gonna get ready. I should be there by.
All right, so you all should have learned a little bit about looping, which I kind of alluded to quite a bit last class, and it's really kind of I mean, there's a lot more to JavaScript and to the language, but we've really kind of hit all like the core concepts, like the fundamentals of a programming language, or like a very basic programming language. And looping is really cool. It can seem kind of confusing and wild at first, but there's a lot of use cases for it that you'll start to see. So let's go ahead and jump into, you guys learned about the while loop and the for loop. While loop is good to know about, but really the for loop is going to cover most of the use cases that you'll have. And so we'll just focus on that one. So let's get a file going for today. I wonder if I should leave Copilot on so you guys can see me use it, or yeah, let's leave it on for a second. Okay, so let's add a script tag, and let's write a for loop. So if I want to log to the console each number from 1 to 10, and I want to use a for loop, what do I type for that?
Or let open parenthesis, let I
Okay.
equal 1.
We do need to turn this off for just a second. All right, for let go away. Okay, for let I, and then you said, I think, equal to 1.
Yep. And then
And why did you start with 1? Like,
you said
why?
you wanted to go from 1 to 10.
Yeah. Yes, good. Okay, and then what else?
Semicolon, and it's while I is less than 11. And then parenthesis, or no, sorry, semicolon, and then I plus plus.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll just console log I in the loop.
Yeah. Okay. So the syntax here, so this is correct. So let's just verify this is working. We'll go open this with live server. Can you guys see this okay? By the way? Okay. So we got a blank page here, but if we open the console, we see indeed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 here. So the syntax here is like a little odd, you might think. Like the curly braces, like the body, that's fine. That's like normal. Like it seems almost like a function body, where like here's the code that's in the boys, quiet. here's the code that's in the body, sort of like a function body, and just in between these curly braces, or similar to like an if body. And then we've got this syntax for here, and then parentheses. And so actually, really, this sort of looks like an if block, right? In terms of just like word and then parentheses and then brackets. But the stuff inside the parentheses is kind of odd, like why semicolon? It almost, like it almost seems like it's almost like separate parameters to a function in a way. So why not commas? So yeah, it's just like a lot of languages for loops look like this, I think, and so I think that's why it's like that. But there's basically 3 pieces to the for loop that you're providing, and essentially it's like, what is the starting index or iterator? Like, what do you want that to start at? And you actually have to you're actually like declaring a variable here. So this can't be const I equals 1 because we actually mutate it. So there's a reason why we have to use let or var here, is because we're like declaring a variable that's going to be checked and iterated. And so the first syntax is that or the first parameter here is like that declaration. And then the second parameter is the stop condition. So, or the continue condition. So should I keep looping is essentially what you're answering here in this second piece here. And you're saying, yes, keep looping as long as I is less than 11. So you're giving it a Boolean here, true or false, of whether or not you want it to keep going. And then after each loop, so it's not doing this right away, it's going to do this and then that. Like, so it's going to run the body and then do this thing. So after each loop has been ran, it will do I++. So it's basically just like calling the code here after each loop has been ran. So if you look at this loop, it'll start off as 1 and then iterate to 2 and then ask, should I go again? And so 2 is less than 11, and so it will go again. It'll log again, then it'll iterate, and then it will check if it should go again, all the way until it gets to 11, and 11 is not less than 11, and so it stops and doesn't run for 11. So this is correct. You could have also done, I less than or equal to 10. You'll see there's not any sort of preference between, either of those. Both would be equally valid. Well, I guess I personally have a preference for less than or equal to 10 if I was writing this, but like plenty of other people would do less than 11. But I would do less than or equal to 10. I don't know why. I just like it more. But yeah, so this is a for loop, and we actually, any questions or anything based off just this, what we've seen so far? Are people like, wow, this is wild, or like, are you guys grasping this okay?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, cool. Okay, so what are some ways that this would be useful? So one is like our bottles of beer thing that we built before. What if we wanted to like generate that whole song for whatever reason? Like we want to generate all the text for it, and send that to something or whatever. Or we wanted to generate like the next 10 lines and then keep going, and then generate the next 10 lines and keep going, rather than like click a button for every single line. Or you might say like, here's the game, like how many bottles of beer do you want to take from the wall? And maybe it's 5, and then it would, it would do 5. And so all of those scenarios, to be able to do that, require looping. So if we wanted to do the bottles of beer game, but we just wanted to generate the whole song, let's not do the body quite yet, but let's say we've got this structure here. Or I guess actually, so if you guys were wanting to generate the 99 bottles of beer song from 99 to 0, what do you think you would do for this parenthesis part of the for loop statement? Like, what would we set I equal to start for that song?
99.
Yep. And then what would be our stop condition? Or what would be our continue condition?
I is greater than or equal to 0.
Yeah, because we want it to run at 0. So yeah, as long as it's greater than 0, and that sort of is assuming that we're doing what here?
I minus minus.
Yeah, exactly. So typically when you're looping, you're going through some sort of range. You're like going to do something a certain number of times. And usually you're either, increasing the iterator or decreasing it. Most of the time I usually see people increasing it, but this is a perfect use case where it makes sense to start at 99 and go down. So we would do, to do this song properly, we would do like yeah, actually this is going to be kind of fun. I could do and then I think technically this song is, do you repeat this? Okay, let's see. Let's see what this does. Okay, let's just start at 5 though, so we don't see all this. And then I'm gonna comment out this loop so we don't have that anymore. Okay. 5 bottles of beer on the wall, 5 bottles of beer, take one down, pass it around. Or space here. Okay, this is great. Okay, let's actually dig into this. So like this, when we get to 1, we don't want to say bottles, we want to say bottle. And then obviously like negative, like 0 bottles of beer on the wall, take one down, pass it around, -1 bottles of beer on the wall doesn't make any sense. I think we'd say take one down, pass it around, 0 bottles of beer on the wall, and then I don't know how the song ends, but we say there are no more bottles of beer or something like that instead of this piece. So we have two. So everything from 5 to 2, it looks decent to me. We could format it a little bit better, but it's working. But then for 1 and 0, we need to do something different. So when you hear me say we need to do something different, what does that make you think of? Like, what do we need to add to this body here to be able to do that?
An if.
Yeah, and if. So we might do something like if I greater than 1, we want to do what we're currently doing, right? And then we would say else if I equals 1, we do something else. And then if it's not greater than 1 and it's not 1, then it's less than 1. And so we can just do an else here. And so this would be, when there's 0, so we can say console log no more bottles on the wall. And then in the case of 1, we pretty much want this whole thing that we had before, but instead of bottles, we want 1 bottle. And then we don't want this take 1 down, pass it around either. So we can just delete that. Wait, no, yeah, we do. We do want that. Take 1 down, pass it around, and then it says 0 bottles of beer on the wall. Okay. So let's look at this. Okay, this is pretty good. So inside the body of a for loop, like we can do anything we want. You can put as much code as you want inside the body of that for loop to be able to do whatever it is that you need to do. And you can also call a function inside the body of the for loop if you wanted to. And you could pass that function the index and other things like that you want. So yeah, it's a good example with the bottles of beer. So what's like actually, did you guys learn about this in your homework? Yes, okay. So in the homework you learned about this, but it's like pretty much one of the most common things you're going to do with looping is you're going to have data in some way. You're going to receive data from a database, or you're going to capture data from the user, and you're going to need to do something for each element or each piece of that data. And so we may have we might have like an array of data. So we could have our shopping cart or something, for example, and that can have different items in it. And we may need to, we may have something we need to do for each item in the shopping cart. We've talked about, we may need to, in this case, we don't have like the price. So we don't have like an array of objects for the shopping cart. We just have the simple string version, but it could be something that has the price in there, and we may need to like discount the price of every item in the shopping cart, or and so we may have something we need to do for each element, and the best way to do that, or really the only way to do that, is with looping. So it's very, very, very common for you to want to loop through each element in an array. And so there is a easy way to do that I'll show you guys in a second, because it's so common We want that to be an easy thing to do in your code. But if you wanted to do that with a for loop, does anybody know how to set up a for loop that's going to loop through and just console log each element in the shopping cart? So we'll do for let I equal what? Does anybody know what I should start off as?
Shopping cart dot length
So
+1.
well, so we are definitely going to use shopping cart dot length, but if we started with that, we'd be starting at, what would that number be if we did shopping cart dot length +1?
Okay, it's you want to start at 0, not the length. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll start, well, I mean, we could start at the end, right? Like if we wanted to loop from the end to the beginning, then what you said is correct. Like we could do that. But we want to, I mean, just for this exercise, we want to start from the beginning. So we'll start at 0 and then we'll do what with the shopping cart dot length, like you mentioned. So this is the, do we want to keep going condition?
Until it's you stop it when it becomes greater than shopping cart dot length +1, or you could do it the equals.
Yeah, so so it's easiest to do these things like when you have an example. So we'll start at 0, and so toilet paper is 0, dog treats is 1, LaCroix is 2, and then we wouldn't want to go any higher than 2. And so the length is 3 of this array, but we want to stop at 2. So we'll do we want to keep going as long as I is less than the shopping cart dot length -1. So shopping cart dot length -1 is 2, and so we would do less than or equal to. Or this is how I would do it. So you could also do less than, hold on, we do less than, sorry, I never do this anymore.
It'd just be just
Yeah.
less than dot length, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't have to do -1 because we'll do once we get to 2, that's less than, well, we don't want to keep going though.
I think
It
it's
would stop at
stopping
4.
-1.
Without
Yeah,
the -1 there, it'll stop at 4. I'm sorry,
Right.
3, I mean.
right, so we need -1.
No, the way it was without the -1, if you're using less than, should work.
Oh, right.
Okay,
Because it'll count to 3, but it will never execute 3.
okay, so shopping cart dot length is 3, -1 is 2, and so if we're on 0, 1, or sorry, 0, 1, 2, if we're on 2, we want it to run to log that one.
But
So I
it'll
think
never get to
it's
3.
right.
So you
With the
need the
left.
equal sign.
Less
Yeah.
than equal sign if you're doing -1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so, but we might as, I mean, yeah,
I mean, you could test it.
yeah, we should, yeah, we can test it. So let's look at it. So 0, 1, 2, and then that's what was logged, and that's what we want. We just want 0, 1, 2. So this looks correct. I think honestly, you'll see people do -1. If I was writing this, which you never have to write for loops because there's better ways to do it. But if I was writing this, I'd probably just do this personal preference. I think it's just a little bit cleaner. And so we still get 0, 1, 2 in that scenario. Let me comment out this bottles of beer song. Okay. So either one of those would be correct. But yeah, essentially we're saying, hey, we want to keep going and like for the length of the shopping cart. So like that shopping cart could have 5 items, it could have 100 items, it could have 1,000 items. Doesn't matter however many are in there. We want our code to run for each of those elements. And so like by using length, we have that ability to be dynamic like that. And then, yeah, we just iterate at the end by 1 for each at the end of each loop, just because we want to go up by 1 each time to go through each index. So I'm console logging I, which is our index. But if I actually want to console log the element in the shopping cart, what do I do here?
Shopping cart, square bracket, I.
Good, really good. So now we see toilet paper, dog treats, LaCroix, and yeah, we can, this is like if we, we most likely we're not just console logging it, we're probably doing something more complicated inside the body here. Like we might have our shopping cart and we may loop and then like add each thing. Like if you go to the shopping cart page in your web app, for example, like if you click the shopping cart, then you typically would see all the shopping cart items. And so the way that they do that is they have the data for what's in your shopping cart. And then when you go to that page, it will loop through each element in the shopping cart array and add it to the page. So if we wanted to make this a little more fancy, and like, let's just, instead of making like an actual web page, we'll make like a, does anybody know what a green screen is? Has anybody heard that term from like old retail? Like nobody's heard green screen before?
You talking about like in film or?
No. Like I don't know, I used to work at Best Buy and we had this like order module thing. And it was like a green screen and you had to like type in to like get to like purchase items and stuff like that. Cause it was like old software that like didn't really have like a graphical user interface. It had like a command and text interface. Yeah, I guess nobody's seen that before, but so we're gonna make you okay, yeah. So we're gonna make like a green screen version of the shopping cart real quick, just because it'll be faster.
It's
So
actually called monochromatic, I believe.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, good to know. So let me comment this out and well, actually, let's reuse it. Okay, so if we want to have our shopping cart be a little more complicated in terms of what's in it, like more information, we're going to use an object for that, right? So instead of an array of strings, we're going to do an array of objects, and then each object will be, you can have like item or name. So we could do like name, toilet paper, and then we could do price. Is kind of what we've typically been doing, $5.99, and then we can also do maybe quantity, and we can just hard code that to 1 or something for now, and then just update each of these. Maybe we have 2 of those for the 2 doggos. Okay. Okay. So we made our shopping cart a little more fancy. So we have more information now using our array of objects, which is like I mentioned before, like such a common way that you're going to structure data. And it's, very similar to a spreadsheet with columns and rows. So with this loop, we're going to loop through each of these elements, but now these elements aren't strings, they're objects. So if I wanted to log the price of each item in the shopping cart, what do I update on line 49 to do that?
The
At
price
the-
property.
Sorry, say that one more time.
The
Square
price
You do
property.
this.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the price property, sorry.
Yeah, so shopping cart I is going to turn into an object, right? So then, directly after that, when this is now an object, that's the context I'm in, and so I can access a property with dot, and then we'll just access the price property. Yeah, let's make sure that works. Cool, so we're seeing our prices logged here. So we're gonna eventually do this, but I'm not, just to be quick, I'm just gonna make like a text-based shopping cart in the console right here. So what we can do is, we can add like a cool border. And then close it. And then for each item, we can console log I, and then this thing plus we'll do item plus, and it'll be nice since we're gonna access this multiple times, like the individual item in the shopping cart, we can do like const shopping cart item equals shopping cart I. So I can do shopping cart item. Item price. Well, really, we want the price to be at this point. Well, I don't know. I feel like they usually show you the total. So maybe that's what we should do instead of showing the individual. Just say like total price. And then we would do shopping cart item dot price times shopping cart item dot quantity.
When you do shopping cart item dot name,
Yes. Okay, and then this is kind of like a little hard to read. So basically I'm grabbing the item and then I'm just making like a string that describes that item. So I'm doing the number in the array it is. So like your first item, your second item, your third item, and then the item name, and then the total price. And then I'm logging that. This. Okay, So let's take a peek. To make this look a little bit better, we might make these longer. Oop. Okay, and then the other, I don't know if you guys have seen like text-based stuff like this, but you'd probably put like a full border around it, you know, like on the sides here. But I don't want to, it's too nerdy for me to spend time on right now. Oh, and we're missing a space. And then it might be nice to have like a comma. Okay. All right, cool. So like imagine this is like a fancy page, but you're essentially, you know, when you're rendering the page, you're going to loop through each item in the shopping cart, and you're just gonna, instead of adding something like this, you'd be adding like a card for each item in the shopping cart, and that card be like nicely formatted with the name of the item, and then description, and then the quantity probably, and then the unit price, and then the total price, and then like a delete button or an edit button or like an update quantity button. Like all of that is still like being generated by a loop. It's just like you're doing more complicated things inside the body of the loop, which is like building that card and adding it to the page. You'd also see on a shopping cart probably the total price, right? So if we wanted to add for the ending here, the total price, how do you guys think we can calculate the total price of every item, like just sum every item in the shopping cart?
Would we do a let variable above the the for loop, and we set it to 0, and then add the price as we go through the loop, or is there a better way?
I think that's the right answer for now, based off what we know for sure. So we're gonna loop through the shopping cart to we're gonna loop through each item in the shopping cart. And so we don't want to do that twice. So we want to take care of doing that in this one loop that we're doing. And so before the loop, we would say let total price equals 0. So we're going to start it at 0. And then for each item, we need to add the price times quantity to it. And then once we've done all the loops, we would have taken care of each item in the shopping cart, and then we can log that total price. So this here, we need to reuse, like this price times quantity, we need to reuse in the line item, and then also when we update the price. So we should move that to a variable. So we would do const total item price or something equals that, and then we'll reference that here. But then somewhere in the loop, it doesn't matter where, we can just do it at the end if we want. We'll do total price plus equals total item price. And then now notice, you know, we're out of this loop, and we're going to then log the total price, because we don't want to log the total price until the loop is complete and we've been able to add each item to the total price that we're calculating. So then we'll just do plus total price. Take a look at this. Cool. Here's our chromatic green screen shopping cart here. Okay, so with the time we've got, any questions about that or anything? Okay, so we're building this for loop to loop through the shopping cart here. And like even I and all of us were like, wait, is it like dot length -1 or is it less than or equal? And like, you know, we're like the length is 3, but the index we need to stop at is 2. And like just for some reason it's just like people, I mean, you can get good at it and you don't really think about it that much, and you can do it really quickly, but like it's still like this is a lot of code for what I'm telling you is such a common use case. So there is a better way to loop through an array that's just a little bit cleaner and more direct to the point. Does anybody know the method that I'm thinking of that's defined on an array that lets you do this?
Is it the find?
So find does do a loop. Find will loop through the array, but it has a very specific purpose and goal for what it's going to do. It will return something. So I just want to loop through each element in the array and then just like do something with each element in the array. And I don't need to return anything. Like in this case here, in our loop here, we didn't, you know, like return anything from our for loop. We just console logged stuff. And that's the method that I want to use, is the one that is meant for that, which is like go through each element in the array and then just do something for each element. Why don't you guys, no, like, I'll just pull up the docs. So you can see all the different methods on an array by going to the docs. So here's all the methods on it. So there's quite a few. The one I'm looking for starts with an F. So it's one of these. Anybody have a guess which one I'm thinking of?
The filter?
No.
For each. For each.
Yeah, for each, yeah.
Oh, for each. I didn't see that one.
Yeah, for each. So filter is amazing. You'll use it all the time. So we'll definitely cover that one soon. But so, and all of these will loop. So filter will loop through each element in the array. Find will loop through each element in the array. Find index, find, like all of these, flat map, all of them will loop. They use looping because they need to do something for each element in the array. But like filter is much more specific than what I'm getting at, which is filter is, hey, we have an array of 10 items and there's some condition I'm looking at where I want to reduce the number of items in the array based off some condition. So you might have an array of the numbers 1 through 10, and you may say, hey, I only want even numbers, or I only want odd numbers. And so the condition is the number even, or is it odd? And you can use filter to say, hey, I'm going to make a new array that only has the even numbers. And that's what filter will do for you. It's, you know, filtering down the number of elements in the array. For each is doing what it sounds like. For each element in the array, do something. And this method doesn't return anything. So this like line right here, the one that does the for eaching, you can't assign that to anything. So there's no return value from running this. Whereas with filter, you do return something. So you would take like words in this example. So here's a list of words. And then we only want the words where the length of the word is more than 6. And so here we're calling this filter method. We're providing this fancy thing that I had shown you guys, I think on day 1 of JavaScript. This is a special syntax to write a function. So this is right here is a function. And what it's doing is it's the condition for whether or not we want to keep the element in the array. So if this returns true, then it will keep the item in the array, in the new array that it's creating. And so after you run this, you get a new array. We assign that to the result and then log the result. And that's this new array that only has words in it that are greater than 6 characters. So for each is you're just doing something for each element in the array. And you can see here, they're just console logging each element. And so this right here, this line right here is the equivalent of that for loop that we wrote before. So we had this for loop up here, or I guess we weren't doing an array on that one. Like this that we had, where we had our shopping cart with our elements in our shopping cart, and then we just wanted to console log each element in the shopping cart. So we had to write this. Let me just change the name here so we can still see this. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of our So back to this initial example we did where we had a basic shopping cart, array of just the names of the items, and then we wanted to loop through and print each item. So that looked like this: toilet paper, dog treats, LaCroix being logged. We don't have to write this for loop if we want to do that. We can do a much simpler thing, which is simple shopping cart dot and then for each. And then so what's happening here is for each is a method on our array, our simple shopping cart array. So it knows, again, like, hey, we're going to be like, it has the context of the array that we're calling it on. And so the contract here is that the method will allow you to do something for each element in the array. And so it's saying, hey, I will take care of the looping. Like, I know to start at 0. I know that's what you want. And I know to go the length of the shopping cart. And so I'll take care of that. I'll just give you each element. So I will do that for you. So you just need to pass me a function that accepts each element and then do what you want with that element. And so instead of using that rocket syntax that you saw, that is kind of fancy and we haven't really learned about, we would write a traditional function. And so we can write our we can say function for each callback. So this is the function we want to have run for each element. And so this will take in a parameter, which will be the element, and then we'll do something with that element. And so let me say for each element, okay. What is happening? Okay, there we go. So I wrote a function and it takes in an element, and then it will log for each element, and then element. It's just going to log whatever that element is. So that's the function I wrote, and that's the function I want to pass to for each. So I'm going to say for each callback, I'm just going to pass this function. So there's a lot of fancy kind of wild stuff happening here. But so let's just see it work real quick. So you can see for each element toilet paper, for each element dog treats, for each element LaCroix. So basically for each here is doing the looping for us, and then it just needs us to tell it what to do with each element. That's what this function is for. And all we want to do is console log each element. And so we need some way to receive each element. And so that's why we have this parameter. And so basically for each is calling our function for each element for us. So this function here, for each callback, gets called, in this case, 3 times with each shopping cart element passed into it. So this is a pretty advanced topic. We've been using this stuff, but these are called higher order functions, where you're passing in as a parameter to a function another function, which is pretty wild. But it's quite useful because we can then not have to write all this looping logic over and over again. I can't see any of your faces, so I don't know. Was that mind-blowing or confusing, or is it just gonna take a while to look at that to understand what's going on?
It's interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, for me, myself personally, learning is so much repetition. So it's definitely overwhelming up front, but just takes practice and practice and practice. So it'll eventually get there.
Cool.
So is there not a way it's
ahead.
not even possible to do it without creating a function to call within the for each statement?
Yeah. So if you're going to use for each, like, let me show you guys. Like when you look at the docs, for example, you're going to use it. It's the definition of it is the for each method executes a provided function once for each array element. And so
within there you could do your function. Okay.
Say that one more time.
So within there you could write your function directly in there with your
when you call for each
element, and then the rocket statement, rocket console.log element. So
yeah, sorry, I'm like the only person that calls it rocket, just so you know. Most people call these arrow functions.
oh, okay.
Just
Well,
so you all know, but I call them rocket. But this right here, man, I opened a can of worms. So let's go ahead and get into it though. This right here is a function. This is the parameter to the function. This is the body here. So there's a few, and this also, the other thing that's different about this is notice it has no name. So this is not a named function.
but you just need a parameter for it to loop through. So you could do like I and then the arrow
Yeah.
log I.
Yes. You can
Okay.
choose whatever name you want here. For sure. Yeah. People typically choose, if this was shopping cart though, people would typically do like item or shopping cart item. Like they want the name to be like relevant. So what's happening here is when we did our for each, we had declared a function before it. So it's named. This is a named function. We can also do what's called an anonymous function. And we can just like directly pass for each that anonymous function. Anonymous meaning doesn't have a name. So I can just do function and then not give it a name and then just take in a limb and then do the brackets for the body. And then, you know, I don't have to do a new line, but I'm going to, and then I can just put console log for each element anonymous. And we can see that. Let me put a space here. So here's the example where we're using a named function. Here's the exact same thing, but with an anonymous function. And so we can see this working. So for each with our regular style, and then for each with our anonymous, still getting the same thing. We're still getting toilet paper, dog treats, LaCroix. This is so common. Writing this, like doing a for, like all these methods, these higher order methods are so common to use that, and you'll see a pattern here, like coders want to write the least amount possible to do the maximum amount of stuff. And so we were like, this is annoying. This is like too much code. And it's too big. Like we should be able to do this on one line. And so they introduced the arrow function, which is a different way to write a function, but just with less syntax. And so that's the example that we saw on MDN, was using the arrow function. And for that, you don't need the function keyword. You can just put a limb like this, and then the arrow, and then what you want to do, which is console log. So hold on, let me get rid of this. So we can achieve on what, well, it got moved to a separate line, so it doesn't really look that much shorter, but let me just get rid of this. Okay. So like these two things here are equivalent. Like they're exactly, well, I mean, except for the console log being different, but they're both equivalent in that this is a function. It's a anonymous arrow function, which is just like less syntax to create a function. But we're still taking in a parameter, and then here's our body. We just didn't have to use function, and we didn't have to use the brackets.
Using this, would you be able to also sum all of the, like the price to get the total price, like the quantity times price for each item?
Good question. So in our more advanced example down here, like if we wanted to clean this up and use our other style, so yes, so we could do shopping cart dot for each, and then we'll take in, I'll just write it in I'll do an anonymous function in the normal way. So we'll take in each shopping cart item. And then we don't need this for anymore. So I'm going to delete that. And then we don't need the shopping cart item. Like, see how I did shopping cart item equals shopping cart I? Like the for each is doing that for us. It's passing it in as a parameter. It's passing in the shopping cart item. So I don't need to, you know, redeclare that variable. So this should work. Like this should be the same. So we still have total price outside here, and then we're doing a for each instead of a loop. And you know, we're still calculating the total price and making the item string and console logging it, and then we're still appending or like adding the price for our items to the total price. So this still works. So let's look at okay, hold on, I got one error. Just need to define this. Oh, yes, why was, oh, okay, this is cool. This is really helpful. So that, sorry, I'm going so fast between these windows. That's probably annoying. But I have an error which I is not defined. I was using I just to get that like 1, 2, 3 on the shopping cart, you know, just for the position. So notice for each in the current version of it is only taking in one parameter, which is the shopping cart item. But for each actually passes more than one parameter. It also passes the index, so I can actually get the index from it by asking, like basically adding that as another parameter to my function. And so now I will be defined. Oh, but notice it's the index, so I need to add 1 to it so it's correctly labeling that. Okay. So yeah, notice this is the same as what we had before, but instead of using a for loop, we're using our for each. So yeah, it's the same thing. Now you'll see like there's actually like on arrays, there's, oh, I guess they don't have some. There's like a specific method for reducing an array to a value. So you may see people use this. This is more advanced. But essentially like there is a method for like this pattern here of creating a starting variable that's set to 0 and then changing it for each element and then returning and getting a new summary. Like like a total price is one number that summarizes the entire shopping cart. And so you're wanting to do something for every element, but you then just want to receive one item. And so there's a specific method for doing that called reduce that we could have used, which means like reduce this array into one thing, which in our case would be the total price. That's pretty advanced. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But yeah, the way we did it here is still applicable. Yeah. Okay. That's everything for this class. So I know maybe a lot of you are pretty overwhelmed or feel behind or feel like there's some advanced stuff that's happened. So that's it. So you have till Saturday to review and get that practice and get that muscle memory. And then you'll also have, so Saturday is our last class. So hopefully a lot of stuff will come together for you during class on Saturday. And I think we've been going about 3 hours typically. So plan on that again. And then you'll have the break to also catch up if you still feel behind as well. So cool. Thank you all. Sorry, I went a little bit over. And yeah, I agree. Rocket function does sound cooler. And yeah, I'll see you all on Saturday.
See you.
See you Saturday. Thank
thanks.
you.
Night, Zach.
Yeah.
See you all.